going to do the most often, but we'll hit this today. So let's say back in those ones that we just did, I wanted to actually know what the measure of angle Z was. Okay, so I don't just want to know what is the cosine of it. I want to know, well, what does angle Z equal? And I'm going to be able to figure it out because only one angle has this as a cosine. Okay, so to do this, anytime it's asking you to find a missing angle measure, you're going to use something called inverse trig. And then I just want you to write second after it. And I'm going to tell you why in a minute, but just write second. Okay, so anytime it says find the angle, and you've got to pay attention to directions because it's hard to tell the difference between like what we just did and this, like the problems look the same. You've got to look at what it's asking you to do. Okay? So here's what we're going to do. We're going to set up a trig ratio here. I know I'm looking for this angle. Okay? From this angle, what is the 27? That's the opposite, adjacent, or hypotenuse. That's opposite. And then what's the 38? That's the adjacent. So what trig ratio is this going to be? If I'm using O and A. Okay, sine, cosine, or tangent is what I'm asking. Tangent, right? Tangent uses O and A. So I know that tangent of my mystery angle, and I could use like an X or something more official there, but they used a question mark, so am I. Tangent of my mystery angle is equal to 27 over 38, right? I'm not going to bother putting that in a decimal yet, or I really don't need to here. I just know that tangent of my mystery angle is equal to 27 over 38. George?
I kind of just got lost for a second. How do we know it's tangent?
How did I know it was tangent? I looked at the angle, and I see how I was only given two sides.
Yeah.
So I figured out what those were. So from this angle, this is opposite, this is adjacent. And then, remember SOHCAHTOA from a minute ago? Okay, if I know SOHCAHTOA and I know I have O and A, that tells me I have to use tangent.
If they had the length of the hypotenuse, would you still know that you would have to do?
If like you had all three?
Yeah.
Actually, if you had all three, you could pick whatever ratio you wanted to set up. There's one like that. Number 15 is like that.
Right.
So we'll get to that. But yeah, most of the time when I give you these, I'm only going to give you two, and so you're kind of locked in on which one you're going to use. But okay, so here's what I'm going to do. It would be really nice if I could ask my calculator, because my calculator has all of this information in it. Hey, calculator, what angle gives you this as a tangent? And here's how you do that. You're going to type in inverse tan, and it's going to look like that. Tan -1, I'm going to show you how in a minute, of 27 divided by 38. Okay? And this is where that second thing comes in. If you hit the second button, see the second button up here? If you hit second and then the tangent button, do you see that you get that tan -1? So I did second tan, and then I'm going to type in 27 divided by 38. Okay, and this one, because it's an angle measure, I'm going to round to the nearest whole number. So I'm going to say that this is 35 degrees. So I just figured out, based on these side lengths, what angle that has to be. Okay? That's a big deal. If you were building, and you were building something slanted, some kind of ramp, or a building support or something, and you knew that the length to the top of the ramp was such and such, and the length of the ramp itself was such and such, you could figure out, like, at what angle do I have to position this so that it'll work out. Okay? Who's having calculator trouble? Okay. Okay, let's see. Okay, so for yours, you're just going to have to type the fraction part in first. So you type in 27 divided by 38 equals, so that's like your decimal, and then you hit second tan. And there's your angle. Okay, so you do your division first and then second tan. Bryce, did you have trouble with yours?
No.
Okay, so I told you that a second ago. Anyone else having calculator trouble? Okay, let's try another one of those. So, number 13, it's asking us to find this angle. Okay, so from this angle, what is the 40? That's across from it, right? So that's the opposite. And what is the 42? That's the hypotenuse, because it's across from the 90, right? So if I'm using O and H, there's my friend Sokotoa again. O and H is which trig ratio? Sine. Good. O and H is sine. So I'm going to set up, and I'm going to say sine of my mystery angle is what over what?
40 over 42.
40 over 42. And how do I say, oh, calculator, what angle has that sine? Okay, so I'm going to hit second sine. So anytime you're looking for an angle, anytime this is what you're looking for, you're using the inverse trig. So second sine, oh, you guys are way ahead of me. Okay. So sine negative 1 of 40 divided by 42 is going to be 72 degrees. Okay.
For the fraction part,
Yep.
is it always going to be the smallest number on top of the big number?
It's a great question. With sine and cosine, it always has to be the smaller number on top. Let's see if you know why that's true. Sine and cosine are always going to have a bigger number on the bottom than on the top. Why is that? Because it's the hypotenuse on the bottom, right? And the hypotenuse always has to be the biggest. With tangent, that's not necessarily true. Okay? Because tangent is just the other two sides, and those can be anything. So tangent, it's not always the smallest over the biggest. But it does always go in this order, opposite over adjacent. Okay, so what trig ratio am I using in this next one? Do you know yet? Mm-hmm. Yep, from this angle, the 6 is the adjacent, and the 8 is the hypotenuse. So I'm going to say cosine of my question mark angle is equal to, adjacent over hypotenuse would be 6 over 8. By the way, I've been writing out this second step, like this sine negative 1, blah, blah, blah. On your work, you don't actually have to write that step out. That's what it looks like in your calculator. I will want to see this. I will want to see like what trig ratio you used and what fraction you used. But then you could just say off to the side like question mark, or probably really most of the time you're going to end up using like X. Okay, you won't be using question mark, but I'm just going with what was on here. So I'm going to hit second cosine of 6 divided by 8, 41 degrees. Okay, look at that last problem on there. What's weird about that? What's that?
I was gonna ask you about
Oh, okay.
When I looked down and I was like, oh.
Nat?
You could do whatever one you wanted.
Yeah, you have all three, don't you? So from this angle, this is the opposite, this is the adjacent, this is the hypotenuse. You can't use all three of them at one time, but since you have all three, you could pick any combination you wanted to do. What do you feel like? Cosine? Okay, I'll use cosine. But somebody out there do the other ones. So somebody try it with sine and somebody try it with tangent. Okay, everybody try something. I'm going to do it with cosine.
Oh, crap.
So cosine of question mark is 56 over 70. So I'm going to do second cosine 56 divided by 70. And I come out with like 37 degrees.
Yeah.
Okay. Who did it with something different? Caitlin, what'd you use?
Tangent, and I got 36 degrees.
Okay, so second tan of, so you would have done 42 over 56.
Yeah.
Okay, so second tan, 42 divided by 56. Okay, now just remember, I got 37 because that 8 rounded that 36 up to a 7.
Oh, so 37.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, so you do want to round it if it needs to be rounded. So 36.8 would round to 37. Okay? Who did it with sine? Did you get the same thing, Robbie?
Yeah.
37 degrees? So it doesn't matter which combination you use as long as you pick the right set of numbers for your combination. Does that make sense? So if I give you one with all three, pick any combination you want. Bryce, did you have a question?
Well, like, I was wondering, is there ever gonna be a time where it's gonna be like point from like something? Like, is it just gonna be a decimal?
For an angle?
Yeah.
Usually the directions for an angle are always just round to the nearest whole number because we don't usually talk about angles as being like 12.2 degrees. I guess if you were doing something really super precise, you might want a decimal angle, but for our purposes, you're always just going to round these to the whole number. Now, when we go to that missing page that I didn't give you today and do the side lengths, then you're going to have decimals in your answers. Okay? Is that making sense? Okay, I'm just going to get you started.